to start the live stream here, so we got that fired up just a few seconds ago here as we kick off the Schmidt Show. If you do ever want to watch us live on video, if you want to see the Schmidt Show, all you have to do is go over to our website, newsradio1029.com, click on the on-demand button there, or actually just kind of hover over it, and you'll see a thing drop down that says Karn TV, and you'll click on that, and you can see the live, or just follow us on Twitter. News Radio 1029 on Twitter is the easiest way to find it that way. Or you can go to our YouTube channel. We got that as well. So 501-403-KRN is the phone number, 501-403-5276 if you happen to be from Bossier City and struggle with numbers. Texter says, what song is that? It's funny that you ask, as producer Leroy and I were just playing around trying to get it up and running. That is a song by a rock and roll supergroup from the 90s, consisting of Ted Nugent, Jack Blades from Night Ranger, Tommy Shaw from Styx, and a no-name drummer named Michael Cardellone, and the name of the band was Damn Yankees. And the name of the song is Don't Tread on Me. That's the song you're looking for. So 501-403-KRN if you do want to join the conversation like that texter just did. We've got a lot to talk about today as we jump into another week. It's good to be back in the chair. I was off yesterday, and so thank you first of all to my friend Richard Friend, and a friend of the show, Richard Friend. It's good to have him on and be able to fill in for me in kind of a last-minute situation. So thank you, Richard, if you're listening. I appreciate you taking the time to fill in for me so I could go have a really, really, really cool day, which we'll get into. I'll talk a little bit about it. I had a great time yesterday. I got to go to a track day at a racetrack out in Oklahoma and had an absolutely fantastic time. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. I want to mention a few guys that were there that made it a really, truly kind of a once in a lifetime experience for me to be able to do that. So a few folks need some thanks, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. What I want to get to here, what we usually try to talk about in the first segment here, is what we're going to talk about for the day, the things that you ought to know. And that's kind of what we've unofficially titled the first segment of the show, is the What You Ought to Know segment. And what you ought to know is that there is a bunch of hullabaloo about education in the state of Arkansas. Apparently all of our kids are stupid, and it's because of rich people. I mean, if you follow the radical progressive left on Twitter or basically any other social media platform, what you'll find out is that your kids are stupid because of rich people. And they think that the Supreme Court is a popularity contest. Not a whole lot of earth-shattering wisdom and intelligence coming from the radical left in Arkansas right now, which explains kind of why the left in Arkansas has become so irrelevant. So for those of you who are on the left, who are involved in politics in the Democrat Party in Arkansas, outside of Little Rock, the reason you're irrelevant is because you don't understand the average Joe American. You are so caught up in your own elitist mindset that you don't recognize where the average Arkansan lives. And not just Arkansan, but the average American across the country. It's shocking to me. One of the things, and we're going to get into this voucher discussion, but one of the things that came up, and I had a very long conversation about this on Twitter, probably way longer than I should have had, quite honestly, because it's social media, and there's a saying, it's something about how does it go? Arguing on the internet is like, oh, I can't remember. But anyway, either way, you end up, you're stupid. And so that's me at this point. I spent so much time arguing about this on the internet that I've become the idiot. And so it genuinely made me feel dumb trying to explain some of this discussion to people. But the vouchers thing, one of the things that you'll hear, and don't buy the lie. And look, I'm not I'm not saying that vouchers are the answer, that vouchers are the fix-all for education system, and it's going to, save the modern public education system. I don't know that that's possible anymore. The modern education system, as we are experiencing it right now, is so deeply flawed and broken. I'm not sure it is salvageable. So you're not going to get me to try to mount a defense that says that vouchers are the grandest solution to have ever come about in the issue of education. However, one of the things that you will hear specifically from the left is that 5% of the vouchers are going to poor people. The other 95% are going to rich people who already have their kids in private schools. Now, the misconception there is that if your kids are in a private school or in a Christian school, that you are somehow part of this elite top 5% wealthy people in the country or wealthy people in Arkansas. And it is an absolute outright lie. Just because your kids are in a private school or in a Christian school or in some other form of non-public education doesn't automatically make you rich. But because that's the only argument or the only debate the left is really capable of is blaming other people and involving themselves in class warfare, they have no other discussion. They have no other way to comprehend that just because your kids are in private school does not mean you're rich. And I use the example of myself. I do this a lot. I draw a lot of my show and a lot of my knowledge on my own personal experience. And my wife and I sent my son to a private school when he was in ninth grade. So his 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years, his high school years, he went to a private school. It was an online private school that was a Judeo-Christian. They didn't claim to be a Christian school. They said they were a school based on Judeo-Christian principles. And so they did this online school thing. It was actually really good. It worked really well for my son. I don't know that it would work for everyone, but it was a great program, and he did well with it. Now, the idea that is an indicator that I was somehow rich during this time is downright laughable, because in the time that I was doing this, in the season of life that we were in while we were sending our son to private school, I was working at least 3 jobs, and at one point 4, in order to be able to afford to send my son to private school. Also, during that time, we were living in a 1973 trailer house that we were given for free. Someone in the trailer park that we lived in had abandoned it and left it to the park, and the park said, hey, if you want it, you can have it, but it's pretty rough. It's going to need some work. And so that's what we did. We took the time, we pulled out all the carpet, we tore up all the nasty old ratty carpet that was covered in dog hair and disgustingness, and we refloored the entire house, we repainted everything, and we did it all on a budget. My wife worked at a store where we got carpet for literal wholesale because it was like leftover stuff that somebody ordered and it didn't fit or it wasn't the right color or whatever it was. So we used that for carpeting. We painted with paint from the local hardware store. We eventually, over the course of 3 years of living there, redid the kitchen with non-painted, non-finished cabinets off the shelf at Home Depot or Lowe's or whichever it was. And we fixed it up on a very, very tight budget. And we did that partially, not only, but partially so we could make sure that our kids got a good education. Now, my daughter seemed to do quite well in the public school. My son did not. But we were far, far, far from this top 5%, this elite group of quote unquote rich people that had their kids in private school. For a time, I was working not only as a part-time pastor, I was also working as a part-time truck driver. On the weekends, I was fueling locomotives for the railroad on the overnight shift. And during the week, I was also doing my radio show. So at a time, I was literally working 4 part-time jobs, and my wife was working so that we could afford to send our son to private school. But if you believe what the left is telling us and what all these radical Democrats are claiming about the voucher system is that the only people that are getting these vouchers are rich kids who are already in private school. That's nonsense. It's an absolute lie. And it is simply an effort to spin a narrative that is the evil rich Republicans that are ruining the school system in the state of Arkansas. And I'm sick and tired of these lying dirtbags claiming that people who are working their butts off and sacrificing for their children are somehow these privileged rich kids. It's absolutely absurd. And it needs to be called out. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about, because I do want to hear from you. And here's the question we're going to ask before we take a quick break. What I do want to hear from you is vouchers. What do you think of them? Do you support them? Do you think there's a better way? We'll get into some of that as we continue. We'll talk to Luis in just a moment here on News Radio 102.9 KARN.